the birds are singing when you go outside. Flowers in the meadow all turn to your light, brighter than the noon sun in a sky so blue. I am just a cloud passing over you, 'cause I have been unlucky almost all my days. I am casting shadows and you are golden rays. In the eye of the storm, fighting to get through, I am just a cloud passing over you. I don't want to hurt you or ever bring you down, or be the reason you worry anymore. That's why maybe it's best if I wasn't around. Darkness at your door. All my friends keep saying there's hope for you, yeah. She's the best thing for you, but I can't forget from the first time we met, it's something I knew, that I am just a cloud passing over you. So afraid that I am hiding you from view. I am just a cloud passing over you. I am just a cloud passing over you. I am just a cloud. Tusen takk.
We're here at Sister Ice to talk to Ed Pettersen about his book and record, I Curse the River of Time, which holds 10 songs and the background history for Ed Pettersen's journey to Norway to find out about his roots. Ed, I kind of thought right away that we should establish some facts here. Your grandfather is sort of the reason for all this happening.
In more ways than one. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could tell us a little bit about who actually was your grandfather.
My grandfather I was named after him. His name was Edmund Marius Jens Pettersen from Sortland, up in the Black Country, up in the Arctic Circle. And his father was a fisherman and a farmer. Yeah, and his mother was the maid, who was Sami, which was the big family secret. And evidently, great-grandpa stooped the maid and got her pregnant, and then sent her off to the other side of Longøya, Sortland, onto Strømfjord to have the baby, because it was like a scandal, So it was like people were, back then, to be the whole Sami thing was a whole nother issue, and so he evidently he had a very rough childhood. His father didn't really want him. He was very close to his mother and kept in touch with my great-grandmother till she died. She only died a year before he did, actually. And, but so, back then they would send Sami children to a school where you weren't allowed to have your culture. You couldn't speak the Sami language. You had to be Norwegian, or you couldn't vote. And the schools, the boarding school, it was very rough. And He just felt it stripped him of his identity. So one day when he was 15 years old, he decided to say, I'm out of here. And he walked off the farm and stowed away on a boat. And he thought, on a fishing boat, he thought it was going to Greenland. And then ended up in New York. So don't ask us for directions, because we don't, you know. And with the funniest part of the story actually is he left Longoya, right? Long Island, and he ended up in Long Island, New York. So that tells you all you need to know about my family. Yeah.
Was that your grandfather? Was he was that a issue to him, that the fact that he left Long Island and ended up on Long Island? Did you see that as a sign from somewhere up above?
I don't know if you would call it a sign. You might also call it stupidity, you know. But I'm sure he got endless amusement from the fact that he left Long Island just to cross 3,000 miles or 6,000 miles to get to Long Island. And he didn't speak any English, you know. He stowed away on the ship. They discovered him when they were too far out to turn back. So they put him to work, and he had been out on fishing boats, obviously, before. What else do you do up there? But, you know, you fish and farm. And, but the problem was, this is what I found out in my research, the problem is that the captain of the ship is responsible for everybody on board. So he has to account for everybody, and he couldn't account for my grandfather. So somehow, before they came into the port, and they got their names checked off, he escaped again. They somehow got him off the boat without the authorities knowing, you know, because he didn't become an American citizen until World War II, when the Nazis started bombing Suitland. He got pissed off and said, I'm going to go fight these bastards, and joined them. And he couldn't join the Navy because he wasn't a citizen, so he made some sort of deal. So, but, yeah.
But I don't know if you mentioned that, but what year was that actually that he left Norway?
1922, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1922, because he was 15, and he was born in 1906.
Okay. So when the Second World War broke out, he was established in America.
He could speak English. Yeah. He had a job. He somehow taught himself English. When he died, he didn't even have an accent. I mean, none, right? Wouldn't teach us Norwegian either, because I'd ask him all the time, and he would say, no, you have to be American. And I think that was because he wouldn't get a job.
Okay. Right?
If you had an accent or you were foreign, you know, of course, right? So he was a tough bastard, though. I mean, you know, think about it. You know, he came to America. He didn't speak English. He had no skills other than being a fisherman, right? Or working on a farm. He taught himself engineering, you know, how to be an engineer in a coal power plant. Because there was a power plant that he could walk to from where he landed. So he got a job. He formed the first union at that power plant. So taught himself English, taught himself engineering, started a union, and was still not a citizen, though. I want to be clear, like, from 1922 to 1939 or whatever, when the war really, 40, he was not legal. And he was living in America. He had my father in 1933. So my father was technically a Norwegian citizen, right?
Okay.
Because he was born to a Norwegian, you know, he wasn't American. So, yeah.
Right. But his loyalty obviously sort of came back in the picture in 1940.
He hated the Nazis.
Right. That was, so he saw himself as a Norwegian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But did he ever go back to Norway?
No. But he wrote letters to his mother every week, you know, because when he died, we found the shoebox. And we opened it up, and it's all these letters in Norwegian to his mother, who had moved to Bergen. You know, I guess because of the whole shame thing, right? That she finally left Suitland and went to Bergen and got a job there, and she was happy there, and she's buried there right now. So no, he was Norwegian, and he was very, very patriotic.
So your grandfather, but he married, right?
He married a Norwegian girl.
He married a Norwegian?
Evelyn Christine Holst.
And she was also she came to America, or
Came
she
to
was
America.
born-
Came to America. Her mother died. I guess she came with her mother. Her mother died, and she was put into an orphanage for Scandinavian children, the Swedes, Danes, and Norwegians. And my grandfather was working at the power plant, and someone told him, hey, because they were having, I guess, my grandfather never had trouble with women, once he learned English, I mean, what do Norwegian sailors do? They drink and screw, So someone said, hey, there's a dance, there's this orphanage that's just Scandinavian kids. And if we go to this dance, we'll pick up some chicks, And he saw my grandmother. She was tall, tall, blonde hair, blue eyes too. He was blonde hair, blue eyes, the whole thing. And boom, and then a year later, they got married and had my father a year after that. And he was an only child. So my grandfather thought he was an only child. My father was an only child, so.
Okay, so your father was actually born of both Norwegian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never knew it though. He died my father died a few years ago. He didn't know this. I found this out researching the book.
All right.
My father had no idea that he was a Norwegian citizen, which is cool because I could become a citizen if I wanted to, because if you have a parent who was an actual citizen, so.
All right, but let's step sort of towards our time. This history about your grandfather, what did that mean in your family growing up?
I don't know what it meant to my brothers and sisters, because I was the oldest, thank God, because I got the Norwegian name, and my brother underneath me, a year younger, got the Italian name, But then there's like 5 to 10 years between the youngest. And so to me, though, because I was, my name was Edmund Marius Jens Pettersen, I wanted to know, I idolized my grandfather. I thought my grandfather was like Elvis and Johnny Cash, like put together, He was like the king, And he was very quiet, but I would bug him. I'd be like, Grandpa, tell me about the old country, tell me about your people. And he'd be like, nah, why do you want to know about that? Just leave it alone. So I assumed he killed somebody, I assumed there was like a murder involved, and that's why he didn't go back. And it turns out that he was just ashamed of being Sami. That was the whole, because remember when he left, it was not cool, So, and he wouldn't tell me anything. And then when he died, I would say to my father, Dad, did Grandpa ever talk about Norway or anything? No, what do you want to know about that for? Just leave it alone. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So, of course, you know what that means. Now I got to know everything. It
became a mystery.
It's an obsession. So from the time I was 10 years old, I was going to find out what this was about. And then when you invited me to come down on the farm to play the festival, we thought it would be kind of funny to like have a contest. Let's help Ed find his Norwegian roots. Well, little did we know that like tons of people showed up with these genealogies going back like 500 years, what? So what? And Henrik and Christoph, I got all these names now, and so then.
So most half of the population of Norway could probably, descend from Pettersen. It's sort of fairly regular name here in Norway, right?
Especially Pettersen sailors.
All right.
Anything's possible. They were horny bastards, so they really were. I mean, think about it,
Well, I actually don't want to think about it. But anyway, you're back in Norway, and the snowball starts to really roll.
Well, then I start, putting the pieces together. I get a call when you and I went over to NRK in Fredrikstad one day, and I played the song about my grandfather, which I'll play later, and evidently somebody called the radio station and said, I'm his cousin. They had heard it up in Sutland, hey, you've got this relative, he's on the radio, he's looking for you. So Tor Bonus, who lives up there, he was the president of the bank up there. It turns out that we thought we were directly related, but what it turns out was there was 2 Anton Pettersens, which was my great-grandfather, on the same farm, which just really complicated things. So nobody ever knew which Anton it was. I mean, we finally figured it out, but Tor contacted me and he said, hey, I have a son, Vegard, in Fredrikstad. I'm going to send him to... So this guy who looks exactly like my little brother shows up at this, you know, and I'm like, I swear to God, I was like looking at my brother John, and I'm like, okay, we must be related. And so then I went up to Suitland shortly thereafter and started, you know, I played a festival up there, and it was great. It was sold out, packed, and everybody at the festival's like, I'm your second cousin, I'm your third cousin, you know. I'm related to the whole freaking island, you know. And then I start reading more, and then I start researching, and then I start asking more questions, and then we find out which Anton it was. Then it really, and there's a farm. You know, my grandfather's youngest brother, his half brother, only died 2 years ago, and he was unmarried, no children. So, guess who owns part of that farm?
Yeah, right.
Edmund Marius Jens II. And so, you know, the cousins are a little, I don't want the farm. You know, I really don't care. It's done. But I think the cousins now, some of the cousins are like, don't want to talk to me because they think I want the farm and the whatever.
All right, this story is told by you in the book part of the book CD.
Right.
But there's a sort of a parallel story running through this as well, and that is your interest in Norwegian writers.
My obsession with Norwegian writers.
Your other obsession.
Yeah. Well, to me, there's no better writers in you know, novelists, authors in the world than in Norway, and there's a reason to me for that. Is that I can name you 25 Norwegian authors, current Norwegian authors. I can name 4 or 5 American ones. And the reason to me, for me personally, is American writers, when you read them, it's like they're writing for the movie rights. You know, like they write books formulaically because they want to get the movie made, you know. Norwegians don't write that way. Norwegians write because of the love of the word and the poetry and the phrasing and the lilt of the sentences. It's all, you know, it's art, right? It's art. And plus, as I've learned through you and Henning and a bunch of other people, Terje Transmo, Norway, starting with Ibsen and Sigurd Undset, became, you know, they decided that this was important to them. So they would, you know, encourage the literature arts and that writing was going to be, and you know, Norwegians, we're pretty good storytellers, you know. I mean, got to keep ourselves busy on those long journeys across the ocean. So yes, it's become an obsession. I've read about 50 or 60 novels, whatever. Not every novel of every author is in English, but a lot of them are. I guess the most popular ones are. And so I've read somewhere between 50 and 60, and I've got another stack that I'm going through. So, yeah. And a lot of those songs, what I did is I took characters from different books. Like I took a character from a Hamsun book, and I took the song Psalm at Journey's End, which is based on the Erik Fosnes Hansen novel. Even though I took the title of the book, the song is about a character in the book. It's about, because the book's about the band on the Titanic. So to a musician, what's better than the band? You know, they went down playing, right? Mm-hmm. I go down playing every day. So.
All right. The title of this whole project, Across the River of Time, is one of the most both popular and also critically well received books of the last 10 years in Norway. Talk a little bit about that specific track.
Well, us Pettersens are pretty good writers. You know?
So it had to be Pettersen.
No, I think the first writer, other than Ibsen and Undset and Bjørnson, that I read was the first modern writer was Per Pettersen, because in America, the book Out Stealing Horses was like huge. I mean, he sold millions of these books in a lot of different languages, and so we knew about this book. So when I came here, I'm like, that's the first book I got to read. And after reading that book, I'm like, this is the guy for me. Because my favorite writer in America is Cormac McCarthy. You know, he did No Country for Old Men, and he had All the Pretty Horses. He's my favorite American writer. Well, to me, Per Pettersen writes the same way. It's very economical. He doesn't threaten your intelligence. He expects you to fill in the spaces between, and it's not overwritten, but it's still poetic, excuse me.
I suppose that's because Per Pettersen, before he became a famous writer, he was working in a bookstore.
Right.
Where he didn't have anything else to do than to read these American writers,
right,
like Cormac
right.
McCarthy, John Fante, and so forth.
Right.
So that's his background, I think.
Makes
right
total
there.
sense. Yeah. Then I read I Cursed the River of Time when that came out. And I loved it too. I've read all of his books because actually I think every Per Pettersen novel is in English now. I wish every Roy Jacobson book was in English, but so I read I Cursed the River of Time, and I was talking to Henning about it, and Henning goes, you know, that's based on a Mao Zedong poem. That's where Per got the title from, and I'm like, really? So then Henning showed me. This is Henning Kvitnes for those who don't know. Everyone here knows, especially in this town. So Henning showed me the poem, and it's a beautiful poem for a dictator. I mean, it's like pretty amazing.
Beautiful, stop. What did you say? Beautiful poem for a dictator? That's interesting.
Not the band, The Dictators.
No.
I have history there too, of course, as you know. So Henning and I were sitting one day playing guitar, and Henning goes, you know, that's a pretty good title for a song. And I was like, let's write it. And we literally right then and there wrote the song, I Cursed the River of Time. And then I had to call Per Pettersen's people and say, hey, is this okay? And they were like, yeah, it's great, go ahead. And then I had to get permission from Per to use it as the subtitle of the book, because I didn't want people thinking, I have too much respect for him for people to think, oh, he's just this other Pettersen trying to, you know, that's not the point. It's out of respect. And it's called, the book is entitled Cursed the River of Time, a Norwegian-American Tale, because Henning's and my vision of the song, I'll play the song later and you'll see, is that you're lamenting your past and what's left of your future. That's the way we saw it, you know, which is different than what Per did in his book. So,
all right. I think we're gonna move on to the sort of musical part of this. I mean, not just the songs, but the fact that it's a well recorded, well played musical aspect to this double production. And the recordings were done in Nashville, which is your hometown. Tell us a little bit about the musicians on the record and how you went about recording.
Well, somehow when the songs were done, it seemed to me that they needed to be, you know, very, very Norwegian. They needed to be dark and melancholy and subtle and not overplayed, and they had needed to breathe. And I mean, they weren't pop songs, you know, they were kind of like Norwegian folk songs in English, to me anyway. That was my perception. So I had been wanting to make a record like that for a long time, so I called up Dennis Crouch is my bass player. He plays with like Elvis Costello and Alison Krauss and Robert Plant and John Fogerty and John Mellencamp and, you know, whatever. Whoever needs the best bass player around, they call this guy. And then, you know, Tim O'Brien, who's a Grammy-winning multi-instrumentalist, and Pete Abbott, who is my best friend for the last 22 years, who lived in Norway for 9 years because he married a Norwegian woman, which is a whole nother story, and actually can speak Norwegian really well. He played drums, and Jen Gunderman from the Jayhawks, the band the Jayhawks, she played keyboards and sang backgrounds, and then Freddie, my brother in arms, Freddie Holm. I mean, there's nobody better than Freddie. Freddie shows up, he plays like 5 things at once, you know, with like his hands and then we just, and it was recorded live. We all sat in a room no bigger than this part of the bar. I mean, literally this small, and we sat in a circle with only 8 tracks. So the back of the back of the drum microphone was like picking up the bass. That was the bass mic, and the back of my vocal mic was picking up the drums and Freddie's amp, and it was that, you know, and all the vocals are live, and we recorded it very, very audiophile, 96K, 24-bit, super duper, and it yeah, you know, and.
But this was all done in your house, right?
It was done in a friend's house.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do have a recording studio?
I do. It wasn't set up yet at the time because I had just bought my house, my new house. And and my recording studio is bigger than what we did this in. I mean, this is small, right? Mine's like twice the size now. So, and then we just played. And I mean, we never did more than 2 takes of a song. And it was all right there. It was fantastic. And, you know, it was very easy to mix. I was Bob Olson, who is my mentor in the audio world. He's been responsible, has had his hand in 110 hit singles at Motown. I heard it through the grapevine. What's Going On? He recorded Marvin Gaye's vocal, right? You know, I mean, this is this kind of guy, and he's very, very, very intense about everything's got to be great. And so he recorded it, he mixed it, he mastered it, and then I got this crazy idea to start writing. So
and then this crazy idea sort of materializes in this very beautiful book. That also, and I was thinking we're going to touch on sort of the last aspect of it, the fact that you have included visual art from Norwegian artists. Say a little bit about who they are.
Well, the cover is by Gunn Vodestad, who's very, very well-known artist. She lives in Oslo, but she's from Niksund on Sortland, on the island of Longyearbyen. And Henning Kvitnes said to me, I was like, well, I don't know what my album cover is going to be. And this is before I wrote the text for the book. I just wanted an album cover. And Henning said, come down with me to Lille Martin, the art gallery here. I want to show you. I own a couple paintings of this woman, and she's great. And, you know, Henning showed me the ones that he wanted. And I was like, yeah, those are good, but not it. But I like her, you know, the artist. And then the guy goes, wait, I've got some in the back. And when he pulled out that one, which is a scene basically of the Black Country, where my family's from, I was like, that's the cover. So the guy goes, oh, well, you know, I can call her up, you know. And I guess somewhere in the translation, Henning's name got in there, and she's a big Henning fan. So she said you can use it for free. I guess she thought it was Henning's album, or... But I've since met her, and
you have to cut this out of the interview.
Yeah. I've since met her, and you know, she loves it, and she's very happy. And then Gunn Heidi here in Halden called me up one day. She's like, "Oh, I'll take you up to the Fredriksten Festning, the fortress." And a friend of mine's an artist who works up there, Lise Yadam. You got to see her work. Okay, I had nothing better to do, you know. So I went up there, and you know, she's got her work all over the floor, like 40 paintings. And I looked at them, I'm like, this stuff's for me. I love this. Can I have that one, that one, that one? And she's, I mean, she just met me. So she's like, who is this crazy idiot? You know, but eventually she gave me the paintings. So it's beautiful because her paintings, her work, her art, illustrates each lyric. So what I was able to do was pick one piece of her artwork that matched the lyrics to me visually, or gave the same feeling. And she was great. And then we got Runar Dronen, who does all of Henning's. And Runar in himself, he does all of Henning's art direction. And he's a fantastic art director. But honestly, I will be upset if he doesn't win a Grammy for this, because when you see the book, it's so genius the way he's an artist himself. So there's a lot of Norwegian art involved in it. It's it's the look, it's the aesthetic, it's the feel. And I hope that the songs match that.
Good. So then we're going to hear some of the songs, right?
Yeah, this old hockey player is going to play a couple songs for you. I got my first, I got a Halden Comets jersey, an official one yesterday. this is like my prized possession now, you know. Like Freddie made me take it off because I was wearing it at home, and he's like, you idiot, take that off. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna sleep in it. So yeah, I'll play some songs.
I mean, most of us don't want hockey players running around in our living rooms. You know.
The thing is, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about hockey players, because as a lot of you know, I had the opportunity to play hockey at a very high level. I played for the U.S. national junior team. We played against the Russians 2 years before Lake Placid. So we beat them 7-1. I scored a goal and knocked a Russian over the boards. My father gave me $100 for that, and this was and we had no money, right? That's how proud he was. Like and you know, the fact that I played a winter sport, you know, like a Norwegian kind of sport, and but the thing, let me tell you something about hockey players. All of us tough guys, we're nice guys off the ice. Well, mostly, but like it's the game to us is a whole nother thing, and it's one of the few games like the Stanley Cup, right? You get every player who wins that gets his name engraved on it, not the team name. You get the team name, but every player. So to us, this is a whole nother thing. You know what I mean? And so it's very intense when we're out there, and I think that's part of it. And so, yeah, but that was a big part of like, a lot of my friends think that my hockey days is a big part of my personality, but I can't help that, man. I'm just a big old lunky Norwegian hockey player.
Good, all right, let's hear some music.
Okay, play some songs. So this is I Curse the River of Time that Henning and I wrote. So. As I curse the river of time, oh, how it winds, only one direction that it knows. Farther from the source, never changing course, carrying me further as it flows. I'm standing at the station with this old suitcase of mine. There's one last destination, and I curse the river of time. I turn around and see a map of all I left behind, a pattern I was not aware I made. All along while I was busy looking for a sign, some things I held so dear began to fade. As I curse the river of time, oh, how it winds, carrying me farther down the line. I'm standing at the station with this old suitcase of mine. There's one last destination, and I curse the river, I curse the river of time. The morning birds cry my true song of everything I lost, while deep into the dark of night I watch my youth be tossed. And I still mourn each chapter gone, the politics of chance. Please hold for me my place in line and save me one slow dance. 'Cause I curse the river of time, oh, how it winds. There's only one direction that it knows, farther from the source, a never-changing course, carrying me further as it flows, carrying me with it as it goes, carrying me closer to my home. Some talk? Go on. I always wanted to write a murder ballad. You know, I love murder ballads, and a lot of people do. And Nick Cave did a whole album of murder ballads that was fantastic. And I've always been a student of them. And I never thought I'd actually write one, but I wanted to. And then when I did the Song of America, of course, I was exposed to thousands of songs, because we literally went through thousands of songs to get it down to the 50 that ended up on the compilation. And so I heard a lot of great murder ballads. A lot of them have boats in them. You know, there's always some, you know, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then, like as I said earlier, I was at this party and this girl was telling me, oh, you know, Halden, why do you want to live there? Oslo's the place to be, and you're crazy, you know. I mean, what's so special about that place? You know, I was glad to get out, and I was like, okay, now I have the subject of my murder ballad. So it's called Sister Ice, The Last Voyage, for a reason. High above this placid town, in my peaceful dwelling, days I watched the fjord swell, but tonight I heard some yelling. She left for the big city to chase her wild-eyed dreams. Said I never will come back no more. This town, it's not what it seems. Well, I just couldn't understand her heartless wandering ways. Why leave a place so beautiful, but some part always stays. She said there's ghosts in this old place, that it had two sides. But I wasn't sure if she was talking of her own life. She came back at holiday, a family affair, where she met a tall boy new to town, handsome and debonair. She didn't know so much of him, but he made her smile. And he took her heart away, if only for a while. She was with a broken heart the day that she met him. She wasn't looking for a love, but she let him in. Told her of a boat he had waiting at the shore to take her away from this, to feel the pain no more. Her folks sent her away to school to be good and smart. They thought they taught her everything, but forgot about her heart. I asked to my neighbors, did you hear that awful sound? They shook their head and no, they said they were not around. The stranger disappeared, some say he stalks the hills and knolls, and late at night amongst the wood he wallows with the trolls. Back home for good they pray, they gather here for her. She rests atop that lonesome hill that overlooks the harbor. Tusen takk. See you next time. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Sister Ice. Thank you, Halden. I love you.